Christian was a wealthy young man with charm and influence. He was engaged to Amanda, a strikingly beautiful woman who had swept him off his feet not long after they met at a high-end art auction. At first, everything seemed perfect: lavish dates, public admiration, and grand romantic gestures. But as time passed, subtle doubts began creeping into Christian's heart. Amanda's love, once warm and seemingly genuine, began to feel transactional. She appeared more invested in the luxury that surrounded their relationship than in the man at its center. Troubled, Christian confided in his best friend, Desmond, who had always been wary of Amanda's intentions. Together, they devised a plan, one that would test the very foundation of Amanda's affection. Christian would pretend to be seriously ill, bedridden and vulnerable, to see how Amanda would respond when the glamour was stripped away. The plan was put into motion swiftly. Christian withdrew from public life, feigned a rare neurological illness, and confined himself to his opulent bedroom. He hired a discreet doctor to make scheduled home visits, further adding to the illusion of a genuine medical condition. Amanda was informed by the doctor that Christian's health had taken a drastic turn and that he would require rest, care, and constant attention. To test her commitment, Christian also gave her full access to one of his personal bank accounts, under the pretext that she would need it to manage the household while he recovered. From the very beginning, Amanda's reaction was telling. She showed concern, but it lacked depth. She didn't cry, didn't stay by his bedside, and within days, began acting like a guest in the house rather than a fiancée of a sick man. Within a week, Amanda's disinterest became even more glaring. Instead of stepping into the role of caregiver or even showing genuine worry, she took a startling step. She hired a young girl named Grace to act as a live-in maid and caregiver for Christian. Amanda justified it by saying she wasn't trained to deal with illnesses and couldn't bear the sight of suffering. Grace was barely 20, humble in appearance, with quiet eyes and a softness in her voice. She moved into the servants' quarters and began attending to Christian's needs diligently, cleaning him with water and towel, feeding him, ensuring his medication was on time, and keeping the room spotless. Meanwhile, Amanda took full advantage of the access Christian had given her to his bank account. She began shopping for expensive clothes, going on spa weekends, and throwing cocktail parties for her friends, acting as if her fiancé were merely away on a business trip and not confined to a bed. Fighting a fake but seemingly debilitating illness, Christian watched everything unfold from behind the veil of his feigned sickness. The hidden cameras he'd discreetly installed in key areas of the mansion fed him a steady stream of truth. Day after day, he saw Amanda's indifference blossom into outright negligence. She barely checked in on him, except when she had guests over and wanted to put on a brief show of concern. Meanwhile, Grace's presence grew into something more than functional. She didn't just do her duties, she did them with empathy. When she brought him meals, she smiled gently and spoke to him with warmth, even when she thought he couldn't respond. At night, she would read aloud to him from his favorite books, believing it might comfort him. She hummed old hymns while tidying his room and sometimes prayed softly at his bedside. Christian, who initially only watched her out of necessity, began to feel something shift in him. Her kindness, her sincerity, her quiet strength, it all started to touch something deep and long forgotten inside him. Christian began to look forward to each day, not because of the fake illness he was enduring, but because of Grace. Her presence was like a balm to his soul. Every morning, she would greet him with a soft smile and a cheerful "Good morning, sir," followed by a gentle hymn that seemed to melt away the heaviness in the room. When he grimaced in pretend pain, she would sit beside him and tell simple, heartfelt stories from her village or funny tales from her childhood, just to make him smile. She took feeding him seriously. When he refused to eat, she would gently scold him, then plead with almost tearful eyes, urging, "Please, sir, just a few spoons. For your strength." Her sincerity left no doubt in Christian's heart. Grace didn't care for him because of money or duty. She cared because she had a good heart. Desmond, who visited regularly under the pretense of checking on Christian's condition, began to notice the quiet shifts in the air. He saw the way Christian's eyes followed Grace around the room, not with entitlement or curiosity, but with admiration and growing affection. One evening, after Grace had left the room, Desmond leaned closer and said with a knowing smirk, "You don't look at her like a man looks at his maid. You look at her like a man who's falling hard." Christian didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at the door Grace had just exited and said, "God has given me a wife without struggle, Desmond. On a platter of gold. I don't even know what I did to deserve her." Desmond chuckled heartily and patted Christian on the shoulder. "Congratulations, brother. You've not just exposed Amanda, you've found gold where you least expected." Then, lowering his voice, he asked, "So when are you going to drop the act? Clearly, you've found what you're looking for." But Christian shook his head slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Not yet," he said. "There's one more thing. Grace, she's not mine yet. I don't want to scare her away or confuse her. I need her heart, Desmond, not just her kindness. And for that, I need to keep playing the role." Just a little longer. Days passed, and the bond between Christian and Grace deepened like roots slowly wrapping around each other underground. One quiet afternoon, as Grace adjusted his pillows and was about to step out of the room, Christian softly called her back. He reached for her hand, his voice low and sincere. "Grace, there's something I need to tell you." She turned, puzzled, and he continued, "I've been watching you. Not just watching, admiring you, falling for you. Grace, I love you." Her eyes widened, panic briefly flickering across her face. "But your fiancée, sir. Amanda. What about her?" Christian smiled gently, his grip still warm around her hand. "Don't worry about her. I'll explain everything soon. Just trust me." Grace blinked, stunned. A rich man? In love with a maid? It didn't make sense to her. But Christian looked at her with such unwavering certainty that a flicker of belief stirred in her heart. Christian knew she was unsure, hesitant. He could feel her walls up, but not in defiance, in disbelief. So he began using the moments they shared in his room more intimately. He asked her to scratch the itches he couldn't reach, or to hold his hand through an episode of pretend pain. It wasn't manipulation, at least not in his mind. He was trying to draw her closer, gently. Gently. One night, as she rubbed balm on his chest, his hand found hers, and he kissed it. She froze, heart thudding. Slowly, they gave into the quiet pull between them. And that night, beneath the dim lights of the bedroom, Christian made love to Grace, tenderly, respectfully, discovering she was untouched, a virgin. That only deepened his feelings, To him, she was a rare gem in a world full of fakes. The morning after their passionate night, Grace moved about the house with a shy, almost awkward presence. Her usual warm greetings were now replaced with quiet glances and timid responses. Christian noticed immediately. When she entered his room with breakfast, eyes cast low, he reached for her hand and gently pulled her to sit beside him. "Grace," he said softly, "don't be shy with me. You are my woman now. What happened between us wasn't a mistake, it was a beginning. And I want you to know, I'm going to marry you soon." Grace looked at him, her eyes wide with emotion, and for a moment, the tension melted into a soft smile that reached her heart. A few days later, Amanda returned from a shopping spree with one of her closest friends, Vivian, a sharp-eyed, outspoken woman who missed nothing. As they walked through the hallway, Vivian noticed Grace quietly mopping the floor nearby. She slowed her steps, gave the girl a once-over, and touched Amanda with her elbow. "Who's that?" she asked. "The maid?" Amanda responded carelessly, still admiring her new shoes. But Vivian narrowed her eyes. "Amanda, that girl is stunning. Are you crazy? Why would you bring such beauty into your home while your man is here, sick and vulnerable? If care isn't taken, she'll steal him right from under your nose." Amanda laughed it off at first, but that comment sank into her like poison. That night, Amanda lay in bed, turning Vivian's words over in her mind. Suddenly, all the little things she had ignored began to surface. Grace spending so much time in Christian's room, his occasional soft smiles when she came in, the quiet way Grace moved through the house like she belonged. A sharp panic cut through her. Could Vivian be right? Had that maid somehow seduced Christian during his illness? Fueled by growing insecurity and jealousy, Amanda made up her mind: Grace had to go. Whether anything had happened or not, she wasn't going to let a lowly maid be the wedge that destroyed her position in Christian's life. The next morning, with a falsely sweet smile, she called Grace into the sitting room and calmly told her she was no longer needed in the house. Just as Amanda finished her cold dismissal, a firm voice echoed from behind, startling both women. "She goes nowhere." They turned around sharply, and there stood Christian, strong, upright, and very much healthy. He wasn't leaning on any cane or needing support, he looked as vibrant as ever. Amanda's eyes widened in shock, and her mouth fell open. "Christian?" she gasped, then immediately rushed toward him, arms outstretched. "You're okay. When did you? How?" But Christian stepped back, raising a hand to stop her. "I was never sick, Amanda," he said calmly, his eyes holding none of the warmth they once had. "It was all a test. And you failed." Amanda froze in her tracks, heart pounding. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "Why would you pretend?" But Christian cut her off, his voice low and deliberate. "Amanda, I think you should be the one leaving this house right now." Her brows furrowed in disbelief. "What? Why? Christian, what are you saying?" He stepped forward slowly, his tone filled with finality. "Because you never loved me. You didn't even care whether I lived or died. All you saw was the money, the luxury, the convenience. I gave you a chance to prove me wrong, and you only confirmed every suspicion I had. You abandoned me the moment the glitz faded." Amanda opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. Christian turned to Grace, who stood frozen in the corner, still processing everything. Now, I have found a wife material in Grace. Someone who cared for me when she thought I had nothing left. I'm in love with her, and I'm going to marry her. His eyes softened as he looked at Grace, but then he glanced back at Amanda one last time, his tone bittersweet. So, thank you, Amanda. Thank you for employing her. She was your only act of kindness. Amanda, stunned and speechless, stood rooted to the spot, watching everything she thought she had crumble in front of her. Amanda stood in stunned silence, her perfectly manicured hands trembling slightly. Her mind raced as she tried to grasp the reality before her. Christian, the man who had once worshipped her, showered her with gifts, gave her the password to his account, and let her walk through his life like it was hers, was now throwing her away. All because of Grace? An ordinary maid. It felt unreal. Everyone around them knew they were engaged. Their pictures had been in society blogs, invitations had been hinted at, and she had already envisioned herself as the wife of one of the city's wealthiest bachelors. How could it all fall apart like this? Tears welled in her eyes. Deep down, she cursed herself for letting her guard down, for ignoring him, for not even pretending to care when he needed her, or at least seemed to. As she walked up to her room, every step felt heavier than the last. She threw open her wardrobe and began pulling her things together in haste. Her mind screamed, if only I had known it was a test. I would have done everything differently. I would have cared, or at least tried to. But it was too late. The damage was done. Grace had already won the heart Amanda treated like furniture, present, but taken for granted. With a burning knot in her chest and shame tugging at her heels, Amanda packed the last of her bags. She gave the house one last look, hoping Christian would stop her, say he was just angry. But he didn't. His silence was louder than any goodbye. And with that, Amanda walked out of his life. Her heels echoing in the empty hall like a fading dream. A few months later, the town of Okigwe buzzed with excitement. The small, quiet village had never seen a wedding quite like this. Christian had insisted the ceremony take place in Grace's hometown, saying it was where his heart truly found peace. Guests arrived from cities near and far, in sparkling convoys. The local church was adorned with flowers in soft pastels and gold trimmings, and a live choir filled the air with music that stirred souls. Grace, dressed in an elegant, custom-made ivory gown, walked down the aisle with quiet grace, her eyes shimmering with tears of joy. Christian stood waiting at the altar, dressed in a regal white and gold border, smiling like a man who had found heaven on earth. Their vows were heartfelt and simple, a promise built not on glamour, but on truth and tested love.